the Ad Podcast. And today I am super excited about the guest we have to share with you guys. Ian Grody is the Chief Creative Officer of Giant Spoon, which he has described as a mid-size agency painting on large-size agency canvases. He's an AdWeek Top 100 creative and works on iconic work on culturally relevant brands like GE's final branding campaign, HBO, Netflix, Savage by Fenty, and a host of other awesome brands. Ian, thanks so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for saying all those very, very nice things about me.
My pleasure. So you've described your background as non-traditional. I also came up through the traditional entertainment channels in development and reality TV. I also studied to be a screenwriter in college. I'll tell you a story about why I decided not to become a writer if you can give me the time. But yeah, we'd just love to, hear a little bit about your origin story, and maybe you can talk about a couple of the rungs on the ladder as you climb the ropes to being a AdWeek Top 100 creative leader and the Chief Creative Officer of Giant Spoon.
Sure, I'm happy to tell you my villain origin story. So I began as a writery writer. I was in film school at NYU. I did a fellowship there. I came out, and the journey as a screenwriter, as someone who's interested in writing movies and TV, is long and arduous, but there are some milestones along the way. The first thing that you do is you, of course, get a great sample out there. You're signed by an agent if you're lucky. You get set up with a variety of meetings. Next thing you know, if you're hardworking and fortunate enough, you sell a script, you sell another script. And I was doing that for quite some time. I was selling a script a year, and I had great agents. And in many ways, it was a living, but it wasn't a life. It was paying my rent, but I wasn't going on to make the things that I wanted to make. They were collecting dust on the shelves of development executives, such as yourself, it sounds like. But I was writing ads on the side, and I was seeing them go, and I got so much out of making things, not theorizing around what the thing could be, but actually being able to go on set, hold it, touch it, write a piece of copy, seeing it go live. All of that was just really, really gratifying for me. So I decided to sort of switch the focus, or shift the spotlight in my career from like the writing full-time thing to focusing on advertising in a meaningful way. I have to say, all through that process, the things that I learned, or through that journey, the things that I learned, I've taken with me into the ad world in a wildly meaningful way. I had so many privileges. I was able to develop a series with Playtone, Tom Hanks's company. I was able to co-create a show with and pitch it with Billy Crystal. Billy Crystal taught me how to pitch. Wow. I was able to, it was amazing. Like, who gets to do that? I was able to work with Carl Gajusek, who taught me so much about writing. He wrote the movie Oblivion. He was the showrunner of season 1 of Stranger Things. Like, I got so much out of that experience that really unlocked a number of doors in the ad world for me later on. So I have zero regrets about going down that path the first time. I wouldn't be where I am, and I feel fortunate to be at this station, to be the CCO at Giant Spoon, if it were not for all of those amazing mentors and partners I had along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I would imagine your sensibility as a creative, coming from a background in, creating long form and script writing, and, as much as that process is so painfully slow and kind of guarded by traditional gatekeepers and a very old boy way of doing business. I've heard you often talk about the work that you guys do at Giant Spoon as hopefully something that people would actually want to pay to see or to show up and experience, versus pay money to skip or get through to the thing that they actually want to get to. So I imagine some of that kind of DNA of more thinking about the work that you do as branded entertainment versus like traditional interruptive advertising
Mm-hmm.
feeds a lot into that classical training that you've had as a storyteller, I would imagine.
Oh yeah. I mean, most people don't like most ads. I think that's just a fact. And before they're biased by, a friend who writes them or makes them sitting next to them, they're going to share that truth. I have 2 kids. I have a 10-year-old and I have a soon to be 7-year-old. And I hear them say things like, "Oh man, I hate ads all the time." I can't help but take that personally. I remind them what their dad does, and what their dad makes isn't the sort of ad that they hate. But it's just very much foundationally about creating things that feel more like the stuff you seek out than exactly as you put it, the thing you pay to skip. So if you consider the real cultural appetites of people, you consider the music they listen to, the podcasts they consume, how they like to engage in immersive experiences, the plays that they go see, the comedy that they seek out, the memes that are populating their social feeds. If you can make your work fold into that, then rather than interrupt it, you've won.
Yeah, no, I love that. So I want to go a little bit back into the transition point. I think, in Los Angeles, where I came up in the LA market, development executive at Nash Entertainment, produced on Oprah Winfrey's Big Give. I financed a $7.5 million independent film. And I fell into digital because I actually was doing a speculative reality TV pilot on the paparazzi. And this was before Facebook and YouTube, mind you. And through kind of embedding myself with the paparazzi for 30 days, I found out how much at that time brands, celebrities, PR agencies manipulated the celebrity news, much like they do influencer marketing today. That was the influencer marketing of that time, which was blogs and celebrity journalism at the biggest distribution. Going back to that idea of how you made the transition, for me, it was very much by haphazard. I had done this traditional TV pilot, learned about the industry, and then thought, oh, that would be pretty interesting trying to, actually work with brands to do placements in celebrity news, which eventually became the influencer marketing world. But I'm curious, what was your transition moment? How did you get involved in working in advertising coming from that creative background? What was the first gig, and what was that experience?
Sure. My first experience, with the exception of a variety of freelance jobs, I had a number of friends working at startups, film distribution companies who invited me to write for them. As I said, I'm a writer first, and I did that on the side for quite some time. I landed at a company called Kettle that's now owned by Code and Theory. It was the first full-time interview that I went on. 15 minutes later, they offered me the job. Wow. And I stayed there for 5+ years and went on to sort of run the content arm of that business. That was a lucky and fortuitous first meeting. But what I brought to that meeting was a point of view and a skill set that I had built less so in the world of freelance advertising and more so in the world of long-form storytelling. And the work I was able to do there, with the goal of sort of elevating and going beyond traditional advertising output, was terrific. I was able to work for Apple. I was able to help reimagine the App Store as an editorial platform. I was able to work on Luxottica brands like Persol and do a choose your own adventure graphic novel that won an ad of the day. I did Oakley spots. I did a ton of stuff for L'Oreal. The opportunities were wonderful. And that was really where I found my footing in the agency world full time. I learned so much. Yeah, I learned so much. I do want to shout out Olivier Père, who is the founder of Kettle, and he was my boss. His skill set was so drastically different from mine. And of course, he was he's a very equipped and adept storyteller, but he was a designer first, and I came in as a writer first. And I got so much from working closely with someone who was so different from me. And that was wonderful, in the same way that Lauren Kushner, who is the CEO over there, taught me so much about the inner workings of agency life from a business perspective. They're both really terrific teachers. So I was able to sort of, when Giant Spoon reached out to me and convinced me to sort of come over here, I was able to pair that and those learnings with everything from the world of writing and freelance advertising to build a department over here. And what they said when they, which was awesome. And what Giant Spoon said when they reached out originally was, look, man, we've seen what is predominantly elevated docu work that you're doing over there at Kettle. But we've also looked back at the space operas and the weird raunchy country musicals that you've done in your experience as a writer. You can do it all. Like, you can paint with all of the colors like on your palette here. Why don't you come give it a try? There's no prescribed form factor. The variety of clients is so vast. Like, you can be completely expressed as you help us like build this practice here. And so that was the very short version of a decades plus story.
Yeah, well, I love it. And, it's not like you jump ship a bunch of times. You've had two really formative experiences, Giant and Google, which is interesting. So I also noticed in your bio that you were a teacher at NYU. I was just curious. I feel like a lot of executives at some point in their life get the opportunity to give back to younger folks and become a mentor. And be a teacher in an official university setting as an academic. Was just curious to how that process informed either your management philosophy of how you work with younger folks on your team, create a pipeline of talent potentially, but also what that does for you as a creative to kind of mentor younger folks in a teaching setting.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's not one that I've ever been asked before. I think it's a really, really important thing. It was tremendously helpful for me. What I taught at the New School as an adjunct professor was not advertising related. It was writing the 1 hour pilot.
Oh,
but
cool.
Which was great. But what I learned in the process, I've brought with me in a major way. For me, the preparation that goes into being a thoughtful professor, all of the work before class is the most important. And in order to show up for my students, I really forced myself for the first time to crystallize my storytelling philosophies as more broadly, and then as they pertain to the construction of like a 1 hour more specifically. But that exercise, the exercise of distillation, making things clear and simple enough to be not only taught, but applied and then measured against, was so wonderful. And it's something that I try to do here all the time. I mean, I've taken that with me everywhere I go. I mean, selfishly, I always, this is a very nerdy thing to say, I always loved school. And I loved college. I loved grad school. I loved going to Tisch at NYU. And I mean, if I could stay in school forever, I would. But that's not allowed, as it turns out.
Yeah. Well, and I think I remember in an interview, I always think it's kind of fun too to learn about people, like when that was that inflection point in hopefully school where you decided you wanted to be a creative, and you, I think at some point expressed that it was at a very young age where, you were looking at toys or something in a classroom experience, but like assigning identities and stories to those building blocks, in a classroom experience. For me, it was in Spanish class in high school. Our final project was to make a film. Yeah, it was cool. And I had such a fun time making that movie with my friends, and just like the level of, we won the class Academy Awards and all that stuff. And I was just like, man, if I'm going to spend the next 4 years studying something and then an entire career, it's got to be something that I really enjoy doing, that I'm having fun while I'm doing it.
That's so amazing. How did your parents take that?
You know, I had very supportive parents around the arts.
Uh-huh.
My mom was a fashion model, and my dad
Oh,
was a
nice.
photographer. My dad was a photographer for Rolling Stone.
Oh, there you go.
Uh, yeah, so they were kind of already, from that traditional or that untraditional creative path. So they were very
Mm.
supportive when I said I wanted to go to film school. I think the problem for me that I had is, I didn't do as much as I had fun doing that Spanish class. I didn't realize the preparation that was required to like get accepted to like USC or Tisch as an undergraduate, at least.
Yeah,
Maybe I
yeah,
should
yeah.
have explored it as a grad, but I ended up going to UCSB, and their film program was very theoretical.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why I gravitated to screenwriting, because it was one department where I felt like, if I could explain a screenwriting class in college, it was like they put all the class clowns in one room and asked them to collaborate. It was that was a really fun experience too, and why I ended up, going down the more traditional entertainment path, or at least at the beginning of my career. But yeah, shout out to mom and dad for being supportive, and all
There
those
you go.
parents out there. Don't force the doctor, lawyer, accountant thing. I've met, it's crazy in the influencer marketing space.
Yeah.
I've met so many influencers, especially influencers that are from immigrant cultures, like first generation American or second generation American influencers, where the parents, made them go to law school, and they figured out how to become a creator during law school. And like, luckily they're doing the thing now that they love, but man, like what a wasted amount of money and time to do something that, they were eventually going to end up going in another direction anyways. But, that's a whole
Well,
other conversation.
what a lawyerly thing to do to find the loophole.
Oh, I love it. So I want to kind of dip into more of your creative philosophy
Yeah.
now, and kind of you leading the creative department at Giant Spoon. So in a quote recently, AI is such a hot topic. I watched one interview that was funny because they like gave you a challenge to not talk about AI, and then you still figure out how to talk about AI. I think it was at NAB last year.
Yeah.
But, you were quoted recently saying that you actually think AI is going to make us more original. So I would love to have you maybe expand on that thought, on how AI is actually going to force us to become more original in our work.
Sure. Yeah. I do believe if AI is properly applied, responsibly applied, it can make us more original. That all falls under the greater heading of proper use. And if you mistake AI output as the destination, as opposed to a waypoint, or a mile marker, I believe you're in trouble. But if you apply it in the right ways to inspire new thought streams, I just think it's a miraculous tool. I often use it as a sort of research assistant, and that's probably more of a writer's approach than someone who would use AI for generative visuals. But I'll give you an example. I was writing a scene recently, and I had one character who was telling a lie, and another character who was a behavioral psychologist and was able to, or should have been able to, detect that lie. And rather than falling back on the research that I had manually done, or, sort of done myself, and having someone fidget nervously with like the brim of their hat, or miss quote themselves, or share facts that were not consistent with ones they'd shared in the past, I would use AI to and have a conversation with it to tell me more about the ways that people might behave in those situations, to make it more nuanced, to make it more real, and to ultimately pivot the scene in a direction that felt more nuanced and more grounded. So I love the opportunity to do stuff like that. Now, I'm still the creative. I still retain control of what occurs, and the humanity of the scene is mine to manipulate. But I'm helped so much by that tool in my back pocket. And in order to get to that degree of understanding, the understanding that I got to via a 10-minute conversation, I would have to do research for, I have to imagine, a month, or 3 weeks, or something like that. So I love using it in ways that help me to be better. I don't want to take me out of the equation by any stretch of the mind. And that is how I think about it in practice.
Yeah, no, I love that example, the idea of it being a research assistant. I remember, when I was more active in screenwriting in my early career, just the rabbit hole that I could go down. I would you set blocks of time aside for writing, but then, you go on Google and start going down some rabbit hole of research. And by the time you go back to the keyboard, you've spent your time that you set aside to write on research. And what I've seen some really cool examples is like data manipulation and data projection, where, you can say like, oh, tell me what the election results will be if XYZ happens, or if this thing happens. It's very good at doing math at scale, to kind of, maybe make data a little bit more accessible to non-quants, at least. I've found to be helpful in that way. So I really. So another quote that you had talked about is, let me pull it up verbatim, because I think it was powerful. So you mentioned that creativity thrives in an environment of positivity and gratitude. I really like that, especially from the perspective of setting culture and intention. I don't know what your experience was in the entertainment industry, but I came up through the talent agency, traditional celebrity PR firm, working for the president of a production company, where back in my tenure, getting a phone thrown at you at the agency was not completely out of question. At the talent agencies back then, I don't know what it's like today. But, you talked a lot about, leading from the perspective of positivity and gratitude versus fear. I would just love to, hear a little bit more about how you've applied that as a management philosophy, because I think that's important as other leaders are thinking about how they set culture for their teams.
Of course, it's a great question. I think it's an important question. Your example definitely, or your experience, rings true. I think the culture of entertainment in the past is cutthroat in many ways. And I definitely experienced the best of it and the worst of it. I saw really, really abusive, fear-driven situations. And then I saw and encountered people who have really rooted for me over time, and who I've rooted for in exchange. The very first person I interned for, Samantha Sprecher, who is a development executive and an independent producer now. She worked for many, many years running Billy Crystal's production company, was such a tremendous example of how bringing positivity and support into like a working environment can have a transformative impact on how you see yourself and how you view your potential and what you want to deliver to the greater organization. I got so much from, and I continue to get so much from my friendship with her. A giant spoon, yes, so much. She's amazing. A giant spoon. I believe we are all asked to give everything. The bar is very high in terms of performance. The volume of work is great. We ask you to be involved in the culture of the company. And when you ask and you ask and you ask, and generosity is what you're requesting, maximum generosity, you have to take a step back and say to yourself, well, if I were in that position and I were being asked to be generous, who would I want to give to the most? The person who scares me, the person who makes me feel as if I fuck up, my job is history, or would I want to give to a culture of people who I know always support me and have my back and feel a little bit more like a family. So I don't consider it much more complex than that. It's just what inspires generosity in an environment where you must give and give and give. And I think it's all that positive recognition. I think it's the gratitude when it's earned, and it's earned very often. I am not Mr. Backpat. I am not Joe. Great job, everyone. Here's a sticker. I think if you asked anyone on the team, they would absolutely agree with you that that's not the case. But when someone does a great job and when someone really delivers, I want them to know that not only do I see it, but that is what good looks like. And I think when you say thank you and you recognize good effort, good results, a component of something that's good, you're giving them a target to aim at in the future. And if you don't have that and you're just shooting in the dark and operating in a space where you're afraid, man, I feel terrible. I mean, what a scary, depressing place to go to every single day. What I want is, at the end of the day, everyone to not only feel appreciated, but to sort of have that post-workout glow of an experience where you are the best kind of tired, you're the best kind of exhausted, because you've given everything that you can. Sorry about those text messages. I have to tell my wife to stop. Yeah. But I think that's really important. And you get there by saying, I see you, like, that was amazing. As well as having gratitude is also and being there for them and telling them when something is not going the right way. And saying, I appreciate everything you put into this. I appreciate you so much. I'm not going to just compliment you into the wrong direction. I'm going to be very straight with you. I'm going to be super real with you because I respect you. And now you're back on course. So it's all part of the equation.
I love that. And what I would imagine is that by building that culture of generosity, that also probably inspires a very high level of trust. And that's probably one of the key ingredients for great creative, right? Is trusting that no idea is too big, too wild, that all ideas are welcome. And it could come, I've heard you also talk about the culture from the perspective of creativity as a very flat creativity organization where really it could come from anyone. It's not just from the creative department. It could come from an accounts person or an ops person, any level of seniority. There's titles and departments don't have any exclusivity on good ideas, right?
No, I mean, I don't think that anyone who knows what they're doing would say that only someone with the job title creative is capable of outputting a great idea. I think that's just so silly. And frankly, I think like titling structure, although it's important for purposes of organization, is a pretty arbitrary thing. And in many cases, I'm the arbiter of that, and it's what I recommend. But it's not to say that the junior creative with a ton of potential doesn't have a very special ability to concept that someone else at a higher station may not have. So I just think, get in a room, take your hats off, be smart people trying to solve a business problem and get to a solution. And if you are capable of ego death in that environment, then you will flourish. But if what you're clinging to is some sort of relationship between the quality of the idea that you shared and your personal value, your value within the organization, you're going to get in your own way. And so you try to create a space where people are, again, not governed by fear. They're really driven by the greed of succeeding as a team.
Yeah, that's great. I think that leads kind of very naturally into my next question. So when you joined Giant Spoon as the head of design and experiential, it was a pretty tight department. I think 3 people, correct? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, it was small.
Nice.
Yeah.
From last count that I've heard you mention publicly, 35, growing even larger.
Yeah. So as a creative, I oversee all of the creative, experiential, and design stuff. So that's traditional campaigns, it's experiential stuff, it's the design practice that we have across New York and LA. That's sort of my remit. There are no other offices yet. The team when I came in was, yes, it was very, very small. I think there were 4 creatives in the New York office. We're probably hovering in the mid to high 20s at any given time. I don't know about 35 necessarily. We'll get there. But I love the feeling of being big enough to be dangerous, but not so big that you don't know what everyone did over the weekend and you don't know what everyone's creative superpower is. Yeah, so no. I think the size right now is perfect for what we're doing. And I have some pretty special, teammates who help to govern the respective practices that I was talking about as well. And the way that I have applied a filter to hiring in the past, and I think it very much aligns with the values of the company, is I've said, okay, I need to find people who have an everything is a canvas mentality, people who have an appetite to story tell across every conceivable and inconceivable medium with an accent on the inconceivable, because that is where we've done so much good damage in the space. The second thing is, are you open to receive as a creative person? Can you not just listen and abide by whatever people across departments are trying to share with you as a recommendation, but walk or march in the direction of your vision while actively cherry picking what's best and what's going to make it better along the way without ego. And then the third thing is just a personal relationship to the work. And that to me is something that, I bring with me from the world of writing. I think about the byline as being very important. When you sign your name or you sign your agency's name to something, it has to be matter. It has to matter. You have to sort of be proud of it. And if you're not, then I know this sounds awful, but I hope you're at home staring at the ceiling at night, thinking about how you can be. Because everyone should be proud of what they do every day, and that should draw them back to the office. That should be why you go to work.
I love that. And that kind of leads me into another quote that I had heard you as far from the perspective of talent. You talked about your approach for talent being picking from the cabbage patches of culture. I love that. I think some more concrete examples you gave is, get people who are from the gaming industry on gaming accounts, not just people from agency land with like a special resume. Get people that are in the cultural mediums that are required to think within the industry of the client, but also the mediums in which you're trying to communicate the message. Maybe that comes a little bit from your non-traditional background, but will you talk a little bit more about your approach to talent?
Yeah, I mean, look, I love an island of misfit toys. I think we're the perfect balance of outsider and insider. I think you need people on the team who have the traditional experience and have an understanding about how to create and shape traditional campaigns. And that all of that is impacted by our sort of left of center, expand the way people experience brands philosophy. But I also love picking people who didn't grow up in the agency world, because they're not so, their sensibilities and their ways of working aren't so fossilized. And they bring a perspective, if they're capable enough, that can really be applied to all of the non-ad-like work that we're doing. So I love hiring people who worked in the art world. I love hiring people who worked in galleries or worked at architecture firms, or in the case of strategy, were political strategists or playwrights or stand-up comedians. That's the secret that's the secret sauce. I mean, we have a way of working. I certainly have a creative philosophy. The company at large has a greater philosophy, again, about expanding the way people experience brands. But what you're really doing when you're building a team is you are leasing people's creative sensibilities and abilities. And I don't want to have the same, apartment again and again and again. I want to have a variety of these amazing spaces where ideas can come to fruition. So I love mixing it up, but I do feel, to close the loop on it, that it's important to have people with traditional experience in that mix too.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you guys have grown from that initial group of 4 to a larger department, how have you as a creative personally dealt with the idea of getting your hands out of the weeds, so to speak, being less the practitioner, less the builder, less the maker, and more the leader, the person who's stewarding the team culture, but also the stewardship of the creative brand of the agency. How's that been for you personally as a creative?
Yeah, I'm smiling because it's such a journey for not only for me, but for a lot of my peers. You don't get into this business thinking, man, I really hope to attend meetings and point and, say something pithy and leave the room, or become someone who wants to sit next to a CMO or a head of creative from a brand at a dinner. You want to do the work. And then you learn that in order to get the best work, sometimes you have to do a different sort of job. So your boss is always the idea. Your boss is always the creative. And you have to, at some point, realize that you're being in it and you're imposing your idea, even if it's a better idea, is not going to help your team get to more good work in the future. So you have to give people the opportunity to have that sort of agency. And I think that the way that I've been able to get to that is largely through hiring. It's been so important. When I had my hands in almost everything, it's because there were perhaps a few people on the team who weren't the right fits. And ultimately, over time, that resolves itself and you find the right fits. But what it showed me was, when you choose someone to welcome into this family, and we take on so much and we really do punch above our weight as an agency, you have to be able to count on everyone. And if you have confidence and faith and belief in the people that are on the team, then you can do the other stuff. You can do the leadership stuff that advances the ball at an even higher level. I think everyone I found has been amazing and truly open to receive in the way that we talked about, which is not to say they are taking my philosophy or my way of thinking about creative verbatim, but they're considering it carefully and thoughtfully enough, and they are taking what's useful to them in each given situation. And I think that's been great. I really believe in this team. I really think they're amazing. And that's what's given me the license to lean out of the day-to-day decks and not go to set every time. And instead really sort of do my job as the CCO, which is to guide the department and guide the business forward and work with my peers, the president of the company, our COO, our chief media officer, and so on.
That's awesome. Well, on that note, I know your team reached out to me originally to pitch you for the show because you guys have been on a bit of a winning streak. So if you would like to brag on the team and some of the wins that you guys have had over the last year, would love to hear about some of the big wins.
Sure. I mean, we've had a few, which is really, really nice, and I appreciate you saying that. And all credit goes to the amazing team here who is in it. I have the privilege of coming in and steering people in one direction or another, but really all of that raw material and all of those amazing ideas are generated in those rooms with them. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was our work for GE. GE is a company that was founded, 133 years ago or so by Thomas Edison. Like this is the guy who invented like the incandescent bulb. This is the company that has created the appliances and the aircraft that have transformed the country. It's a big one. And they came to us and they said, we have to create our last campaign as GE because we're becoming three new companies. And so like the weight of that is monumental. And it's not only monumental because of that legacy, it's monumental because GE has been a client of Giant Spoon since Giant Spoon began 10 years ago. And they really helped us build this company. And so what we created for them was a 360 integrated campaign called Once Now Forever. And we chapterized it in terms of the output in a really interesting way. Once was about sort of celebrating legacy. So we built a beautiful film with a director named Kevin Foley and the DP who shot Jojo Rabbit and The Master for Paul Thomas Anderson. And what we did is we created the first night game in 1935, which GE powered. So that was a look back. And the thesis was, in 1935, GE changed the way we see the game. Now they're changing the way we see the world, like in the future. So that was really wonderful and cool. Then we built an amazing drone show that took place across continents in New York and in India to celebrate our Now chapter. And we looked at the three companies GE was becoming and all their amazing innovations. And we told that once upon a future story in the sky above India and above New York. And that was pretty magical. And you saw the people from GE who'd been there, like Larry Culp, all of these incredible people who have shaped the company, like with tears in their eyes. It was incredible. Yeah. And it's just wild. And then for our tomorrow, we did our Forever play. We took over papers in every city. We announced We Are Go for GE Aerospace. We announced It's On for GE Vernova, their electric energy company, their green energy company. And we did an entire experience for the New York Stock Exchange and day two campaigns for everyone as well. So it was really a comprehensive, chapterized send off and new beginning for an iconic brand that felt really special. So that was that's the first.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was cool. If I can do a brief second one, just to shout out some of the amazing creatives here. Yeah, we did one for Ritual vitamins. And typically in the past, like supplement brands have not had very sexy advertising. What we did, it's not, you don't think like supplement brand, man, I got to watch this spot. This is going to rock.
Yeah. And Ritual, if I knowing what I know about them, because I represented an influencer who is the world's largest female fitness influencer. We did some work for them and they're very focused on female empowerment, right?
Yes, they are. They're awesome. I mean, they're founded by a mother, and they also, we learned when it comes to traceability and looking for the best ingredients and letting you know where they come from, they also trace like a mother. And that became actually the foundation of our campaign. And it was all about tracing like a motherfucker. And we had this incredible ad home where the capsule from the vitamin obscured fucker. And we had a really cheeky, fun, stylish spot where there was a mom who, loved hard and also went hard and had a wild potty mouth. And we were able to sort of bleep out a series of fucks along the way. But what you got out of that, and this is, I go back to like some of the character stuff I was mentioning earlier. I think it's really important. What we showed was, I thought, like a dimensional character in a very short period of time. So in that 30, you saw mom who could like be super warm with the kids, and then also behaviorally shift gears or code switch to be like potty mouth, "Don't fuck with me" on the line at school, the car line at school, Lisa, mom. And I just loved seeing that behavioral vacillation that made moms feel more dynamic, was more true to them, and it became a great way to talk about the product entertainingly. And I know that was something we touched on before as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, congratulations for you and the team. So to the end of the show here, what are you most excited about for the future of the work that you're doing with Giant Spoon?
Man, great question. There's so much that's coming down that we're super excited about, that I'm personally super excited about. In less than 3 weeks, maybe something like 3 weeks, you will see some incredibly exciting work for HBO.
Nice.
And that will roll out over the course of a very big week globally, with a couple of marquee moments. But I can't say more than that. Something really big for HBO, though, and I'm sure everyone will see it. We have 3 big moments. Yeah, dude, I'm so excited. It's another Giant Spoon first, which I can't wait for. We have 3 big moments at Comic-Con. We're doing work for Google and Marvel. We're doing work for HBO again for their new show about the Penguin, and then we have a big activation for our. So you'll see it all.
Well, I'll be excited. I'm here in San Diego, and Comic-Con is my Super Bowl for the advertising world. Being here in San Diego, so I'll be excited to go down and check those out. Well, Ian, hey, it's been an absolute pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing the research on you and getting to learn a little bit about your backstory and the conversation that we had today. Anything else you want to plug as we move to sign off here?
No, only that you've been a great host and a great conversation partner, and I appreciate you. Thank you very much, Dylan.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you. All right. For those of you who are listening or watching at home, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast or follow us wherever you happen to be tuning in. And if you leave a review, that's how the show finds an audience naturally in an organic way. And most importantly, if you have a colleague out there somewhere in advertising land, brand land, or just somebody that could use a boost to their creative toolkit, don't forget to share the episode that I did with Ian today. So without further ado, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much.